In light of what's happened at the Capitol recently, we have a lot of progressives, regressive Dumocrats, who are wringing their Vienna sausage fingers over the violence there because that's just un-American and we don't want to tolerate that and it's violent and this is not America and these people are violent, they need to be called out. People like that toady divorcee, Seder. Stan, you know what they say about divorcees, right? That guy's definitely codependent, probably a whole bunch of other things if he ever went back to the psychiatrist. People like him, you got the dumb jock, LeBron James, who I called out in a video. Look up my video, LeBron James gets dunked on by YouTube kook detector. This dumb jock was saying, well, Buck, when I was a kid, we just fought it out with a fist and people didn't die. And I went back and looked up homicide rates in California from when he was a kid and found out, no, it was a lot higher back then. So the dumb jock didn't know. But it's something that's oft repeated by people who, they confuse, when they're a celebrity, they confuse notoriety with intelligence. And LeBron James, you are a dumb jock. He's one of them. Oh, you got the guy, Old Fart Rants, who checked my playlist. I've debunked this guy. Oh, I lost count. He's gotten so mad at me, I've given him detailed responses on stuff, and he'll throw a hissy fit and ask for a summary, which when a regressive Democrat asks you for a summary, that means I don't know what you're talking about. Dumb it down for me. Wow, that guy's intelligence is right up there with his hygiene. I've destroyed him many times. Then you got the janitor of McCainisthroughX. There's a case of pot, meat, kettle. But they're all worried about it, and they're not the only ones, but those four clowns, Dave and Stan both have, I think Dave's got more failed marriages than Stan, but less trips to the dentist. And LeBron, he's just an idiot, and McCainisthroughX, she just has a lot of free time. I don't know, I'd be surprised. I've tried to debate her on this. I've challenged her to come to my channel and she won't, but I doubt she finished high school. But since these people are so worried, and check the link underneath the video. I'll have all the information. You can read it all. Again, it's not something you're going to read in 2 minutes because this isn't a 10-minute video where some guy has a couple autistics feeding him talking points while he's sitting in front of a camera uploading videos to YouTube saying, I have a talk show. No, you have an internet show. So since they're really worried about violence, and they're worried about violent people and civil unrest and all this, and we're gonna have a civil war. Here's some things you guys can have autistic fits about. And keep in mind, all these homicide figures, I'm going to redo this again in 2018, 2019, 2020 for that 3-year block. As soon as the 2020 FBI data is up, give them a couple months. But all the data I'm going to give you for now is from 2015 to 2017. And keep in mind, the homicide rate in the U.S. for that time frame was 5.2 per 100,000. Baltimore. All these cities also voted Democrat. Overwhelmingly. And they're diverse, because we like diversity. We got to have diversity for diversity's sake. Baltimore, from 2015 to 2017, had 1,004 homicides. That's 1,004 dead bodies. And their homicide rate was 54.3. Detroit, from 2015 to 2017, had 864 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate 42.7. Cleveland, 320 homicides. Homicide rate 27.6. That's a lot of dead bodies. Jackson, Mississippi, 171 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Memphis, 501 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate 25.55. Birmingham, Alabama, 216 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate of 34 per 100,000. Nolens, 495 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate 42.15. East St. Louis, 76 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate 94.4 per 100,000. 94.4. This is a city. That city is dying. In fact, that city is already dead. It's gone. Nobody moves there. It's lost a whole bunch of population since the late 50s. Nope. Here's another one, St. Louis. That's another thing you'll realize when you go through these cities. They're leaving. The only people left behind are not very good people. St. Louis. homicide rate of 62.1. 62.1 per 100,000. That's 581 homicides. The Missouri, this is where I found conflicting data. The Missouri Uniform Crime Reporting Program said only 525 dead bodies in St. Louis and a homicide rate of 56.1. Atlanta, 284. 284 homicides. Fulton County, 423. 284 homicides in Atlanta, 423 in Fulton. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate Fulton, 13.68. Homicide rate Atlanta, 19.97. Bibb County, Georgia, 78 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. 16.98 homicide rate. Dougherty County, Georgia, 47 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate 17.28. Again, all these are Democrat-run cities and been for a long time. I even covered data at the state level. There's state representatives, state senators. Usually it's overwhelmingly Democrat. Although I will say, add this real quickly, a lot of the cities are dying so fast that when redistricting occurs, they're able to split it up to where they don't have the power they had decades ago. Like Detroit, for example. Detroit used to elect everybody in Michigan, not anymore. Because Detroit is losing population. People do not want to live there. That's why Rashida Tlaib was elected there, because there's not good people living there. If you disagree with me, go take a trip through Detroit. And good luck. Montgomery, Alabama, 101 homicides. Homicide rate 16.83. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 194 homicides. Homicide rate 28.45. Flint, Michigan, 129 homicides. Homicide rate 16.07. Of all those jurisdictions I covered, I did this in two parts. Baltimore, Detroit, Cleveland, Jackson, etc., all the way down, their homicide rate was 35.616 for 2015 through 2017. 35.616 per 100,000 for 2015 through 2017. That's 6.847 times higher than the national rate. They had roughly 1.448% of all the U.S. population for that time frame. 1.448% of the entire U.S. population, but they had 9.895% of all homicides. Now for the second part that I also did. Philadelphia, again, this is 2015 through 2017. Philadelphia, 869 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate 18.246. Pine Bluff, Arkansas, 43 homicides. Homicide rate of 32.675. Little Rock, Arkansas. I may use this video for other people too. Aside from the intro, I'll have to do a new intro. Little Rock, Arkansas. 129 homicides. Homicide rate 21.68. That's a lot of dead bodies. Gary, Indiana. 144 homicides. Homicide rate of 62.72. Chicago, which needs no introduction. Chicago, 1,902 homicides from 2015 to 2017. 1,902. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate of 23.36. Guess who they voted for in the last 3 presidential elections? These aren't good people. If they're concerned about homicide and violence, they should go clean up their own neighborhood. Camden, New Jersey, 102 homicides. Homicide rate of 45.32. Keep in mind, per 100,000, the U.S. rate was 5.2 per 100,000. I also got data on the percentage of households that are single parent using NCES data, which has been updated a couple times since then. And you'll see there's a lot of fatherless children and a lot of parents of kids not in the workforce, not in the labor force, probably have never been in the labor force, a lot of them, because they're drug addicts and alcoholics. But when they need cigarettes and booze, they'll get that. Newark, New Jersey, 284 homicides. Homicide rate of 33.46. Wilmington, Delaware, 87 homicides. Homicide rate of 40.56, almost 8 times the U.S. rate. North Little Rock, Arkansas, 32 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate of 16.1. Compton, California, 69 homicides. Homicide rate of 23.5. Washington, D.C., 413 homicides. That's 413 dead bodies. Homicide rate of 20.17 per 100,000. 61% of households in D.C. are single parent. 17.9% of parents, this is a couple years ago, of children, parents of children, 17.9% of parents of children in D.C. public schools are not in the labor force. The black adult wedlock birth rate in D.C., if I remember right, hovered around 80% from 2010 to 2017. Richmond, Virginia, 170 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate of 25.35. Roanoke, Virginia, 43 homicides. Homicide rate of 14.36. Norfolk, Virginia. I remember Stan Seder did a video on, oh, Virginia's turning to the Democrats. They're turning. Guess what these cities vote for? Norfolk, Virginia, 110 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies. Homicide rate of 14.94. Petersburg, Virginia. Now, this is one of the worst cities in America. Petersburg, Virginia, only 39 homicides. That's a lot of dead bodies for a small city. Homicide rate of 40.58. Roughly 8 times the national average. Man, there's a lot of violent people in Petersburg, Virginia. No wonder nobody wants to live there. Newport News, Virginia, 80 homicides. Homicide rate of 14.71. Guess who they voted for? Like I said, I'll redo this in a couple months after the FBI data is out for 2020. Guess what? You'll be seeing a lot of Democrat cities. Hampton, Virginia, 59 homicides. Homicide rate of 14.51. Portsmouth, Virginia, 62 homicides. Homicide rate of 21.67. Danville, Virginia, 35 homicides. Homicide rate of 27.98. Dayton, Ohio, another city that's dying and doesn't have as much electoral power in the state of Ohio as it had decades ago. Dayton, Ohio, 93 homicides. Homicide rate of 22.0. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 406 homicides. Homicide rate of 22.67. Guess who they voted for? Guess what their demographics are? Fayetteville, North Carolina. Guess who they voted for? Guess their demographics. Fayetteville, North Carolina, 74 homicides. Homicide rate of 12.0. Durham, North Carolina, 95 homicides. Homicide rate of 12.05. Greensboro, North Carolina, 108 homicides. Homicide rate of 12.52. Buffalo, New York, 125 homicides. Homicide rate of 16.15. That's a lot of dead bodies. Rochester, New York, 105 homicides. Homicide rate of 16.75. Well over 3 times the national rate. And all those jurisdictions, if I add those two together, they were 4.199% roughly of the entire U.S. population. 4.199% responsible for 21.12% of all the homicides. Their homicide rate en masse was an astonishing 26.223, which is a shade over 5 times the national average. So if you're worried about dead bodies and violence, there's a bunch of cities where you need to go into the inner city and teach people to quit having kids before they get married, quit having kids before they're out of high school, quit having kids before you drop out of high school. If you drop out of high school, you probably shouldn't have them. Stay off of drugs. Don't become an alcoholic. Doing meth is not a good idea. Sitting around and smoking weed all day. But I think getting the fathers back in the house would go a long way. So if you're really worried about that, there's some things you can complain about. I gave you plenty of it. The link is underneath the video. Have a nice day, and don't thank me now for the sobering information.